not only the Justice Department, but the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI looked very carefully. They found no evidence of widespread fraud. Let's discuss all this and a lot more with the Republican Senator, former presidential nominee Mitt Romney of Utah. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. I know you got a lot going on the Hill right now. We have a lot to discuss. Yesterday, on the coronavirus, it was the single deadliest day of the pandemic. More than 2,800 Americans were reported dead just yesterday alone. More than 100,000 people are hospitalized all across the country. The CDC director says the next 3 months will be, in his words, the most difficult time in the public health history of this nation. So here's the question, Senator. Where is the president's leadership? He's obsessed with everything else, not with this.
Well, this hasn't been the focus of his rhetoric, apparently, and I think it's a great human tragedy, without question. The extraordinary loss of life is heartbreaking and, in some respects, unnecessary. Not in all respects, but we've relaxed our standards as individuals. Some states haven't had mask mandates. And from Washington, we have not had a consistent plan and plea for people to wear masks, to social distance, to take all the measures that would reduce the spread of this disease. It's unfortunate that this became a political issue. It's not political. This is public health. And unfortunately, we have not made that message clear enough to the American people, and people are dying because of it. Yeah, the country's never been in worse shape since this pandemic erupted in January and February, early March. But there are still, as you well know, Senator, Republican governors are resisting basic health and safety measures, as you just described them. Your state of Utah only enacted a mask mandate last month after hospitals became overwhelmed. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida says people in Florida, he actually says this, are happier without safety measures. Is this type of attitude costing thousands and thousands of American lives? Well, no question that unless you take this very, very seriously and communicate that this is not a political matter, this is not a matter of liberty, this is a matter of safety and public health. And we have people who are very, very sick, many people in the hospital. We have people who have died and are dying. It's unacceptable. We needed to have a far clearer message from the very beginning that this was serious, that we should take every step we possibly could in order to constrain this virus's spread. And we haven't done that, and we're suffering the consequences even today. Yeah, the president of the United States has been missing in action when it comes to this, and it's simply awful. As you know, Senator, vaccines are coming, and we're all very optimistic. They're coming very soon, but states all around the country, they need money to distribute these vaccines. 712,000 Americans filed for first-time unemployment benefits just last week alone, and millions are set to lose benefits right after Christmas. Bottom line, are you going to get a COVID relief bill done for the American people anytime soon? Yeah, I'm quite confident that there will be a COVID relief measure. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. We proposed, as you know, on a bipartisan basis, a very realistic plan. As you recall on your show, Nancy Pelosi was saying she wanted $2 trillion. If she couldn't get $2 trillion, she didn't want anything. And fortunately, a number of Democrats, Mark Warner, Joe Manchin, Jeanne Shaheen, have worked together with Republicans. We've come up with a $908 billion compromise, which I think is going to happen either by itself or perhaps parts of it are going to be incorporated in an omnibus bill that will be worked out by Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and, of course, Leader McConnell. Well, you think he's going to support it, the Majority Leader Mitch McConnell? He was earlier speaking about $500 billion. He thought $900 billion was too much. Well, we'll see what he incorporates in the final proposal that worked out with he and the other members of leadership. But we have a $900 billion bill. Whether it becomes 800 or 700 or what the final number is, I think is uncertain. But I do believe that key provisions, which is extending unemployment insurance, extending support for small businesses, these vaccine distribution funds, these elements are going to be included. I'm absolutely convinced. And that's going to get to the American people before the end of the year. Does it have money for states and cities? Well, in our plan, the $908 billion plan, we do. We have $160 billion that goes to states, cities, counties, other entities. And I think that should be part of the final plan. But in order for that to be in the final plan, there has to be liability protection as well. And we're still negotiating the fine points on liability protection as well as that state and local money. If we can get that done, I think there's a good prospect that it'll be in the final bill. If we can't, why, it'll be a bill that doesn't include all the elements that we're currently negotiating.
Are you and your Senate colleagues, Senator Romney, ready to stay here in Washington until legislation is passed? Because as you know, people are suffering all over the country. You see these long, horrendous lines. People can't even put food on the table and feed their kids.
Absolutely. I think the members of the group that have been coming together negotiating this package have said, look, we're going to stay here right through the end of the year. We're not going to go home until this is done. And a significant portion of our legislation relates to food security, both getting help to farmers and ranchers, but also getting help to food banks as well as the SNAP program, food stamp program. That's important for this package, as well as the other measures I mentioned.
So you're upbeat that maybe in the coming days you can pass $908 billion. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I believe you're either going to see the entire package, the $908 billion package, or you'll see leadership, meaning Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and so forth. They'll come together and take pieces of that in the final bill that gets done, probably attached to an omnibus bill. But one way or the other, you're going to see unemployment insurance, help for small businesses, vaccine distribution. These elements are going to be included, I believe, before the end of the year.
This is so important. It's been nearly a month, as you know, Senator, since the presidential election was called. But today, President Trump said he probably has enough votes to win every, this is his words, battleground state. As you know, nationally in the popular vote, he's lost by almost 7 million votes right now. How much damage is President Trump doing to our country, to our standing around the world, by refusing to concede and alleging widespread fraud going on all over the country?
Well, the Attorney General has said there's no there. The courts have all looked at the evidence and said there's no evidence there. Now, of course, there are going to be circumstances where 1 or 2 or a handful or maybe even 100 ballots were incorrectly sent in or counted, and those things get adjusted and get fixed. But the idea of widespread fraud has simply not been shown to us. And if that evidence does exist, please show it to us. But at this stage, we don't see it. And so for the president or anyone else to go out and allege widespread fraud and say the election is rigged and the election was stolen, that obviously strikes at the very foundation of democracy here and around the world, for that matter. People watch America. If we can't have a free and fair election, how can they have it in other nations of the world?
Yeah.
So this is critical for the whole cause of democracy. Russia and China have to be just laughing, smiling from ear to ear. This is critical for the preservation of the very democracy and freedom that's important for our country and for others.
Yeah, well said, because they are laughing. The adversaries of the United States, they're laughing at this, what the President of the United States is doing now to our reputation around the world by claiming widespread fraud in this presidential election. Another thing that is so disturbing, Senator, I'm sure you agree with me, is the president's false claims that they're leading to death threats to Democratic and Republican election workers at every level around the country. A Trump campaign lawyer said former election security official Chris Krebs, a Republican, should be shot. This is so dangerous. Could the president's words, what he's doing right now every single day, especially on Twitter, lead to more violence against these decent, hardworking, patriotic Americans?
I certainly hope not. I mean, it makes me very, very frightened for those people, and my heart goes out to them. They're courageous. They've stood up for what they believe is absolutely right. You have the Attorney General of the United States likewise saying that there's no evidence of the kind of widespread fraud that the president is talking about. But when he attacks election officials, I think he puts them at risk. I think that's very unfortunate. But look, the president has every right to pursue every legal avenue, to go to courts as he feels he can make his case. But if he doesn't have evidence that can convince a court, and if he doesn't have evidence that can convince the American people of widespread voter fraud, then making these accusations is only damaging the cause of freedom and putting people's lives at risk.
I know you got to run, Senator. One final question. Since the election, have you had a chance to speak with the president-elect of the United States, Joe Biden?
Not since the election, no. And actually, it's been quite a long time since I spoke with Joe Biden. He was kind enough to come speak at a conference of mine in Utah a couple of years ago. He was charming as always, and I look forward to working with him. And
you've accepted the fact that he will be the next president of the United States at noon on January 20th, Inauguration Day?
Yes.
Senator Mitt Romney.